order. First order of business is to approve the agenda. Please take a look at the agenda. Unless there's any proposed changes, I'd ask for unanimous consent to approve the agenda. Hearing nothing, the agenda is approved. Next is consideration of the May 11th, 2026 minutes. Please take a minute to review the minutes, and unless there's any proposed changes, corrections, I'd ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes.
I have a couple of notes comparing mine to the notes from last time. So the consideration of the April 27th minutes was a motion by Tim, seconded by Gabe. And according to my notes, the adjournment, the motion was made by Gabe and Sean seconded. So.
We have a couple of proposed edits to the minutes, so I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes, given those edits.
Great. You have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Maria. All those in favor of approving the minutes as edited, say aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next is general business.
And real quick, we need to have Sean introduce himself.
Thank you. I always forget about that. We do need to have Sean, who is online, one of the commissioners. Please introduce yourself very quickly.
Sean Linehan, Planning Commissioner.
Thanks, Sean. Good to see you. Next is general business. This is comments from the public about something that is not on the agenda. We have a couple of folks here in the room. Does anybody in the room have anything to say? All right. Mr. Whitaker is here.
Apologies if any of this sounds like planning 101, but Vermont law requires the municipal plan to contain a land use plan mandatory, which includes public and semi-public uses and provision of necessary community facilities and services. The homeless committee and the city council working with the churches, there's a lot of memos and demand going on for where are we going to get public facilities to keep people from soiling the sidewalks and the alleys and having a place to sleep at night, to camp. The city council's been reticent to designate a place, fearing legal backlash. But it occurred to me that the statute puts it clearly on the planning commission's job for a complete city plan to have addressed utilities and facilities plan consisting of map and statement of present and prospective community facilities and public utilities. That would include bathrooms and other similar facilities and activities and recommendations to meet future needs for community facilities and services. This is all in 4382A2 and 4382A4. So these are gaps, serious omissions in the plan that you recently adopted or prepared. So it's including priority of need, costs, and methods of financing in the same section. Identifying where unhoused individuals may legally congregate during the day, where they might camp at night, and where public restrooms will be located are quintessential land use and public facilities planning questions. They require this is not statute, this is my comment. They require site identification, map designation, and implementation programming. Under 4382, these determinations belong in the municipal plan itself, developed by the Planning Commission. How does the adopted plan handle these obligations? The following programs from the adopted City Plan 2025 address the location of services for unhoused persons and public restrooms. Each delegates responsibility exclusively to the city manager, not to the planning department or not to the Planning Commission. That's an abdication. It's clearly in statute with you and the city plan, and y'all have said, oh, the city manager will take care of it. She just got here. She's not from around here. She has no planning background. So that's that's a punt or a kick the can. That's an abdication of y'all's duty. So HM.2, plan to identify locations for unsheltered individuals to congregate and camp. This is from the city plan. Conflicts have occurred over the past few years with certain unhoused persons and their interactions with the broader public. This has led to sections of the bike path being unsafe and unhoused people being moved along without any approved area where they can congregate. There are also no approved camping locations within the city where persons can set up temporary shelter during the night. This results in individuals being continually moved out of places without an approved alternative. A plan is needed to identify such places and secure funding to support them. So I'm putting that back at you because you're the planning commission. You've heard what the statute says. You didn't do it. And now the city manager is least capable of doing it. She doesn't have the access to the planning department maps. She doesn't have the familiarity with the land, with the water and sewer, possibility to tie in plumbed showers and toilets. So HM4, continue the public restroom project in the community services chapter. While the city, this is quote from the plan, the city has a number of restroom facilities available throughout the day. The need for another public restroom has been identified and a committee appointed to find a location. This public restroom may ultimately be associated with a homeless emergency day shelter, which could also provide shower facilities, but this new restroom is intended for more than the homeless, so there may eventually be both a new restroom as well as a new shelter. One, that's a piss poor assessment. It doesn't recognize the need for many restrooms around town for elderly people, mothers with children who've soiled their pants, incontinent and unhoused, and the tourists. You've heard about this new, all around adventure, and we're going to bring hundreds or thousands of bicyclists and kayakers into Montpelier. And nobody blinked when they said, oh, well, we'll need showers and bathrooms for them. But nobody thought to implement this required section of statute on the planning commission. And HM5, continue and improve the public restroom program. What program? There is no program. There are a number of public restrooms in the downtown. We lost the two in the basement here that had abundant hot water and privacy during the 23 flood, and no priority has been put on restoring them. So again, I'm throwing this back at y'all, but the idea that y'all allowed Mike to punt it to the city manager instead of have the planning department inventory it, make proposals, and bring it before you for a vote is unconscionable and I'm asking you to do something about it, develop a new day shelter, HM8. A day shelter project will provide indoor and/or outdoor space for the homeless population to safely and legally reside. It would, I got my pages mixed up. In any case, method, no timeline. Instead, it defers all of this to the city manager to figure out later. This is not a minor implementation details. These are the substance of what the statute requires the plan to contain. The Planning Commission should have recognized that the plan as adopted does not meet 4382A2 and A4 requirements for these elements. It substitutes an administrative to-do list for actual planning. The problem is compounded by the practical reality. The person being assigned these high priority site specific tasks, community facing planning tasks, is a newly appointed city manager who is new to town, unfamiliar with Montpelier's geography, its history of the homeless response, and is not a planner. These are exactly the kinds of tasks that require local knowledge, planning expertise, and a public process. And these are the Planning Commission's core functions. So I've cited the statute directly. I've pointed to the gaps in programs HM.2, HM.4, HM.5, HM.6, and HM.8. They're each labeled high priority, yet none of them contain a map, a candidate site, a cost estimate, or a financing plan. That's exactly what the statute requires the plan to contain. So the incoming city manager is new to Montpelier, no history on how to do this, assigning her to identify camping areas, restroom locations, and day shelter without any planning framework is setting her up and those who need the services up to fail. Does the planning commission plan to open an amendment process and bring these elements into compliance with the statute, or to develop supplemental planning work that gives the city manager an actual framework to execute? That's a question for y'all, because it's not okay to abdicate it or to summarize it out of recognition in the minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve, just one question. You said the city doesn't have access to planning department maps. Can you elaborate on that?
In order to do this task, you would need to identify sites first, prospective sites,
Mhm.
like Ribellini did for the 1214 site, and then he asked Public Works, where's the water and sewer in relation to this? Could we hook some toilet and showers? A retired contractor, landlord, developer in town has proposed putting a pair of trailers on the empty lot next between Shaw's and the drawing board. So that could be sewer and water connected. It could be Montpelier Live wants a pretty facade on it, timber frame or something. That's fine. It's visible enough to where safety is minimal concern in that location. There's enough eyes and traffic around it on three sides to not really be a hazard area. But being that these are high priority issues on the homelessness committee and on the city council, which is going to talk about the homeless priorities every meeting now going forward, I think it's time for y'all to step up and fill this serious gap in your plan.
I'm not quite sure if that answered my question. You said the city manager doesn't have
City manager has
access.
her hands full.
No,
Y'all do not
sorry.
have your hands full.
Can you please answer my question? You said the city manager doesn't have access to the.
No, you're just doing a setup, and I'm not gonna,
What do you mean set
you
up?
know, the city manager can ask Mike or Nick for maps.
I assume so.
You know
You're
damn
saying,
well.
I assume so. And you are saying that she doesn't have access to
She's
the
not a
maps.
planner, and she doesn't know the town well enough to take care of this. This is an urgent emergency situation.
I'm
Why are
simply,
you not dealing with it?
I'm simply asking you questions based on the things that you said, Steve. And you are,
Do you need to recess the meeting for a minute?
No, hold on.
and you are unable to answer the question directly. I'm not trying to set you up. I'm trying to get more clarity.
The city manager can ask whatever she wants, whether current staff will deceive her, that's already been proven.
Okay, well, that is completely besides the point from
No,
what
you
you've
asked,
just
you
been
got your
discussing.
answer.
It's an interesting answer. I'd also say that it is not true that she doesn't have experience in this space and isn't prepared. We hired her for a reason.
She's not prepared to do land use planning around toilets, bathrooms, camping areas in a town she's not yet familiar with. And she has a huge learning curve to get her head around this staff. But I don't think what her capacity is simply a distraction from what the planning commission has abdicated. It's statutory, the planning commission's job, and I've cited the statutory sections. So I would ask y'all to discuss how are you gonna step up and either start an amendment process. Any questions?
No, thanks. Mike? Oh, now I'm gonna take a quick break.
I'm sorry, folks. I was going to ask if the transcription option has been activated, please.
We're getting a thumbs up from Artwork and Media.
Does your Zoom have transcript on?
It has the ability to transcribe.
The recording is being made, the transcript can get made afterwards, but it won't be attributed to each person if it's not done live.
The moderator has that as an option if chosen.
Who's moderator? Mike can turn it on. When he gets.
So when everybody returns to their seats, we can address some of the meeting things that people have requested.
Are we in a pause, folks?
Recess
Yeah,
while.
we're in a pause for now.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate you.
online that have their hands raised. I guess we'll start with Mr. Goldman. Do you have some comments you'd like to raise?
Sure, it's very quick, although I was the second person, I will take the first position. It was just the same observation. I'm going to, goodness, well, first let me say good evening to everybody. And thank you all for coming. It's a hot summer, hot summer eve, and I'm sure we all would have many things we could be doing besides this. But I was just going to ask that you please consider the transcription. I'm going to so many meetings, East Montpelier, Plainfield, Regional Planning Commission. It really is a great option if you so choose. And I think it's part of the moderator's option, to make that happen. That's it. Just going to say thank you again, and look forward to the meeting. Thank you, folks.
Thanks. Next we have Seamus.
Hi all. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay for the full meeting due to some other obligations, which I'm bummed about because the map seemed interesting and important. But I just wanted to briefly let folks know that at the Housing Committee meeting next week on Tuesday, June 2nd, I'll be sharing the results of a document that I've been working on with a bunch of folks, including city staff and several local developers, to document the permitting process and fees in Montpelier. The Housing Committee's goals on this were to primarily compare Montpelier's process and fees to other municipalities, which is still in process. But as I was talking to these folks, particularly the developers, they ended up providing a lot of useful input on zoning as well. And so I just wanted to flag that, the first iteration that I'll share on Tuesday and subsequent iterations may end up being of interest to the Planning Commission. And I know there's already, synergies between the work of this commission and the Housing Committee, but just wanted to flag that for folks.
Great, thanks. Is there anybody else who has any general business they want to put out there? Great. Steve, did you mess with that speaker? Yeah, can you put it back up? I'm having.
It became harder for me to do.
Yeah.
Towel.
She said she brought in a backpack. I think none of us saw the backpack. None of us.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the towel on the second row.
That's your towel. Can I make one comment since I forgot to make about the maps on your later part of your?
Do you want to make the comment during the discussion of the maps?
Just a heads up, because I'm gonna have to leave to the.
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
The parcel, it says the parcel lines are turned on, but the parcel lines aren't showing. When you got the over and under maps, you can't see the parcel lines.
Okay.
So I've been pouring through those, trying to see the differences, but.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Steve. Next is comments from the commission. I don't have anything. Does anybody else have anything they want to? Oh, Tim.
I was tacking on to what Seamus was talking about. We met with, Marie and I met with some housing committee folks beginning of last week, was it? And I was going to mention Seamus's work, which is he's doing as a volunteer, which is hugely helpful. And then we also discussed a couple of other things. One was a list of their ongoing list that they have, rolling list of identified topics and prioritized by top to bottom. And so they'll be looking at a couple of things that we've discussed here, and we'll continue discussing with them. Those I'll just mention a few here, which are discussing or trying to figure out any overlaps between city and state in terms of regulations. Sort of creatively looking at the idea of a priority housing overlay district, and they're looking at St. Albans as a model for that.
And can I interrupt? What are the salient features of that priority housing district?
I'm going to read directly from their list here.
Okay.
which they have. I just wanted to say this is in their words. Simplify or eliminate density requirements. Remove prohibition incentive circle. Consider benefits of form-based rules, and consider how priority housing interacts with the design review district and established neighborhoods. And I will add to that, they've talked about how a lot of our zoning dimensions could remain as is for commercial development, but for housing, we do a lot of elimination of dimensions with the hopes of not only allowing, but incentivizing more house building. Preparing for Tier 1A status, particularly the growth map. And this is something that they would like to chat with all of us about, and trying to find a time for Planning Commission, Housing Committee, and Christian Meyer from CVRPC to get together to discuss it. Focused on the map, I guess, but also just talking about Tier 1A generally. So that's an idea that's out there at the moment. And the last thing I'll say is that they're looking into is the idea of combining site plan review and subdivision review. And they say at least eliminating overlapping provisions. And they said that will take statute into consideration. So anyway, those are 4 things that they are putting their minds together and seeing what else is out there, especially looking at other communities as potential examples.
Great, thanks, Jim.
Sandy prepared that document about her edits to the zoning. Do you know if she was going to update that? I don't know. Is my mic on?
Sorry, can you
Do you
repeat yourself?
Sandy was going to revise that document and get it back to you, or was that just the final?
The one I'm reading from?
Well, she had compiled this long document.
Yeah,
with,
that's
like,
what I'm reading
individual
from.
line items.
Which is I don't think is finalized. So I'm just taking that top
Okay.
chunk that we've discussed a little bit in the past as well.
Okay, so that's still incoming then.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. That just sort of reminds me real quick, Mike, can you give me just a jog my memory? I know that the Tier 1A sort of progress is a bit in flux now. Am I right about that?
So, yeah, I can, this is going to be a little bit of my update for comments was, because I talked to, I actually talked to Christian Meyer at the RPC, and he said that he had heard that there was going to be a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the Housing Commission on 6/8 at our Planning Commission meeting. So I was like, oh, okay. Wow. So I was going to let you know. It's actually a good night and a good opportunity to do that. And he is willing to be here to answer all those questions. And really the big picture is it's a process that's ongoing, and it depends where you are in the state. You have to go in and get preliminary approval of your future land use map. The regional planning commissions have to go in and get preliminary approval. Then they go and adopt it, and then apply for final approval.
Right.
And most of the west coast of Vermont has gone in and gotten preliminary approval. Nobody else has gone in to get preliminary approval yet. And St. Albans and Northwest is the first one to submit for final approval. So they're in right now getting final approval. We haven't submitted ours, so we're still going to be intending on doing Tier 1A status. The RPC is preparing their preliminary, which they hope to send in June. I'll say early July. But they need to go through and kind of proof this with every community. So they're going to, they're not going to go to Planning Commission and City Council. They just want to go to one. And so we said, let's just do this at the Planning Commission. We'll have the housing committees show up. So that way we've got a meeting where people can get all the facts, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's just, it's astounding how much misinformation gets spread. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so they're just going to go through the process and say, this is how it's going to work. This is the process. And it'll be up to City Council to say, once the preliminary maps are in, City council can go through and vote to be tier 1B. And then as soon as the map gets approved as final, we would be a tier 1B community. Then to be a tier 1A community, we would then have to apply, and that's an actual full process application that would have to go in to become a tier 1A. So there's no community in the state that is a tier 1A community right now because nobody has an official map to allow them to apply for one. So that's what we will get there as soon as we are allowed to apply. We will put ourselves in line to apply for it. We're certainly eligible. We're probably the only community in central Vermont that will be eligible for it.
And just also, I remember hearing not too long ago that there was some sort of second guessing of some of the aspects of 181 at the legislature. I don't know if anything has changed. I don't know if that, and if any of that discussion at the State House has changed the RPC or the town's
No.
sort of track.
The only change that was made was regarding tier 3, which is mostly affecting rural communities.
Oh.
And that was a disastrously bad idea at many levels. Not the idea of tier 1-3, that actually was really good. It was just shocking when they came out with the map, A&R came out with their map. In my professional opinion, I would have created a map that was much different than the one they came out with, and it doesn't surprise me that people were upset by that map. I think it was a good idea. I think it was the right idea. I think the execution fell short. But so that's what was repealed with the tier 1-3 protection, the tier 3 protections. But tier 1A and tier 1B haven't changed. I think the only other thing they did is there were some changes of when the expirations are, because they were expecting everybody, all the RPCs to be done by a certain date. So they bumped that to 2028 or 2029. So RPCs have a little bit more time to get their final approved future land use maps done.
Great.
I think one other thing that was added was that the temporary exemption from Act 250 or growth center may have been extended to 2030. It was set to expire at the end of this year. And I believe that's been extended to 2030. Subject to check.
Yeah.
That affects Salem passage.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks for that update. Anything else, Tim, or?
No, I've seen Sean as his.
Oh, I do. Oh, I can barely see it in the corner. Sean, you have your hand up. It looks like you're virtual here. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick update about Country Club Road that it's almost June already. Developers are supposed to be coming back with their revised proposals June 1st. So if we want to put feedback for subcommittee or full for the full council on our agenda, one of the meetings for next month would be a good idea.
Is the subcommittee or the council opening up a formal public comment period again?
I don't believe so, but Maria had asked about this at the last meeting.
Okay.
And I think that even without them soliciting advice, we are
Yeah,
well within our
yeah,
rights.
no, I'm just trying to figure out what they're kind of announcing. So
They canceled their meeting on the 21st.
Are you gonna be able to get quick access to those proposals once they come in? Are you plugged into that?
I hope they should be accessible to the public fairly quickly.
Yeah, I know. I figured.
I expect them to be posted by June 2nd.
Okay.
It might be a little bit longer. I know we're getting them June 1st. Stephanie, she has to go through and review them and then scrub them for anything that may be confidential. If there's nothing confidential, it may go out relatively quick. If there are things that have to get extracted, that may take some time. But that's her goal, is to get them out within the first couple of days, because even the committee doesn't get to review it until she gets a chance to go through them and make sure that there are two separate files. There's a public file, and then there's the confidential file, which the members of the subcommittee and the members of city council will have access to, but we don't know how much will be in the confidential side or not.
So just procedurally, is the subcommittee gonna make a recommendation to the full council? Is that the,
Yes,
Right.
in but not until their time frame that they have is July to make that recommendation, July 15th.
okay.
Recommendation to council.
Yeah, they've got a June 2nd to 16th for subcommittee review, follow-up questions and deliberations, June 17th to July 8th for final vetting, references, proof of financial capacity, those types of things. July 15th would be the recommendation to council, July 22nd, council decision. And then that leaves a couple of months for a targeted LOI date, letter of interest. And then October for the target development agreement date, just because it's an iterative process to go back and forth on how these things work. So you take them in steps.
Very quickly, just given the tight turnaround on this, do we want to take a look at getting this on an agenda? Probably, I feel like the 6th is our next meeting, but that might be a little too soon to have a big discussion about that, which would push
Oh, June 8th?
June 8th would be, yeah. I wonder if that's.
Meeting with the housing committee that day.
Yeah,
maybe
I know,
go
that's a long day.
Go to the 22nd.
Yeah, my question is, if we wait till the 22nd, is that gonna put us in a bind where we're a little bit behind? We don't have to have an answer to this, but something to think about.
It might be nice to briefly discuss it on the 8th,
Okay.
to get but put a time limit on it, since we're having the housing committee and regional planning folks at that meeting.
Okay. That sound good, folks? It'll be a pretty quick cursory review of those proposals, but see if we can get a bit of our first impressions and then hopefully have something more concrete by the 22nd. And if need be, I guess I don't want to do this in the middle of the summer, but could always have an extra meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Anything else, Sean? Great, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say, we have Gabe's, it looks like he's online. Gabe, you're gonna need to introduce yourself very quickly.
Yeah, Gabe Lajeunesse, Planning Commissioner.
Thank you. I think that's it from comments from the commission. Mike, do you have anything else that you want to update us on before we move on?
I don't think so. I think that was the big one. I wanted to make sure that I gave you a heads up on that. The next agenda would have the meeting with the RPC and now the meeting with the to at least introduce the CCR proposals.
Great. Okay, moving on. Next agenda item is the continued discussion of the zoning map changes. And I will leave it up to one of you map gurus to take the lead on this one.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, I thought Nick was going to go and digest this down, so we didn't have the 4 squares. I thought he was going to get it back down to 2, but we still have the 4. So
Mine is 2.
Oh,
I think
yours has
there's a
2?
way to
Oh, there you
filter
I
it.
have
aha.
To figure out how to refilter it again.
Well, let me go through and share my screen.
you got 2?
No, I have
Oh,
4.
you're 4, you have 5, right?
I remember, on my phone, I was able to expand and contract.
Well, they made it small. It's small on the screen, unfortunately, the way it's laid out, but we had started at the last meeting. We haven't gone through to add the new updates that were discussed last time, and I guess it was left as an open question. I wanted to make sure you want me to move forward with taking some of the changes that you've suggested and incorporate them into a new potential map. So I think we talked about using like mixed use residential 2 for up here for National Life and the area down next to Memorial Drive. And I think we were starting to work our way around. I think we were. I don't remember any changes specifically to the section that was now mixed use residential 1, which has Northfield Street out to the hotel. And I think we had talked about leaving much of this as 3, I believe, residential 3 for Freedom Drive, Independence, and those areas. I don't think there are many changes in there. We talked about Prospect Street, and these areas probably should be residential 3. They should not be mixed use residential. Maybe go to one of my maps. Looking at Sean's, which I know we kind of said. Yeah, this is the one when we were using Maria's. Let me see if I can I make this one expand map? Oh, there we go. So we'll just use Maria's. So I was able to expand that one. So we talked about Prospect Street. This should not be mixed use residential. That actually should be residential 3,000. This area, I believe we wanted residential 3,000 again. Freedom Drive, was that where we made that? I'm just trying to make sure I've got this, and if you want me, I can start making another draft that we don't have to talk about, that we just, when we get to the end and finish going all the way around, we can go back and kind of recheck our math.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I think that, well, I mean, again, we don't have like the dimensional standards figured out, but my idea is to have like a medium residential, low residential, and then keep res 9,000 as is. So in that sense, the Freedom Drive area would be that medium density residential, which is
throughout, instead of having a split between medium and low. I'm not recalling exactly where we ended up with that discussion.
because I think Freedom Drive is already pretty dense. That's
It
kind of
has
like
some
condo
spaces. It does have condos. It does have some open space in there. I don't know if there are covenants on the open space, but there is some space in there. But again, if we think from a vision standpoint that the Freedom Drive area is different than the what's the other, Independence Green, the other one?
Colonial Drive.
Colonial Drive, thank you. Colonial Drive. So if we kind of think Colonial Drive is, we envision in the future, because we're trying to think future character, that area would be higher density. Northfield Street, Colonial Drive would be higher density than the Freedom Drive area. Then I think your map would accurately kind of lay that out as an MDR HDR scenario.
right.
So
I don't know. What do other people think?
I have a question. I don't want to derail things too much. I assume that condominium area has an HOA in other places. How does the HOA play into these zoning regulations that we are creating?
So they will have their own internal requirements, but if they have other opportunities, and let me use Murray Hill as an example because it came up. They have a lot of conserved land because they they were allowed to build, I think, 180 or something like that units. And so over the entire area, they just clunked it all into one area and built it out. And the rest of it is open space. It's kind of how the planned unit developments work. But when we change the zoning, they actually have more development potential. So they could come in, but they would have to come in as an organization within all of their own deed restrictions to go through and say, we're going to make a change. And that would probably be true of any of these. And it may be one of these ones of a vote of the board that any of them would allow additional units. May or may not happen. There also may be in time the potential of what would happen if there's any statutory requirements that come in that go through and say any property with a single family home can have an accessory dwelling unit. And if you're in a condo, does that mean you could add a accessory dwelling unit? I mean, obviously, if it's in a building, you couldn't do it. But there are also ones that have independent. Again, Murray Hill. As soon as you turn into Murray Hill, you've got a number of separate single detached family dwelling units that they're limited to that one, but could they add an ADU? I mean, that's a legal question, but there may be rules that come down from the state that start to claw some of these back from these, but there's a lot of contract law, and that's going to be way outside of my expertise. But I would say we never know if there's going to be potential, but if there isn't, if the zoning doesn't provide the potential, then they have no way of trying to explore that to exercise it. If we say, you now have the ability to have many more units in your condo if you want to, but you're going to have contract, those contracts that are going to bind you unless they give you an out that says, well, with a vote of 2/3 or 3/4 or 90% or whatever it is, you could amend these documents to make changes, but that's for a land use attorney.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Going back to this map, I'm of the mindset generally that our city is not very big. I don't see. That's debatable. I'll just say I think we're 10 square miles. I think that St. Albans is 2 square miles. So there's a difference. But I'm still of the mindset that Montpelier is not very big. If you zoom into our city and then zoom out, geography wise, we're really not very big. Okay, with that said, I also don't, these are relatively small neighborhoods. I don't see a big difference between the two of them. I would put both of them into medium density, personally. And that'll be a theme, I think, for me to be expanding outward to bring inward, meaning the further we can bring our higher density residential zoning districts out, that is what I'm going to be in favor of.
That's kind of reminding me of our guiding principles about wanting to create as much housing opportunity as possible. I don't remember exactly how we worded it, but be very permissive with housing opportunities. So if we're on the fence about something, we decided our guiding principles would sort of tilt us towards expansive housing opportunities.
Yep.
So
yeah, we do have very generous densities already, and I know this looking around the country. I'm surprised when I look at other communities, and I had the opportunity to go and look up city of Las Vegas to go through and see what their zoning was, and our zoning densities are higher than Las Vegas, a city of 2-point-something million people. We've got higher zoning densities. Their highest zoning density had like 14 units an acre. Ours go up to 27, and then in the downtown we don't have a density requirement. So comparing us to metropolitan areas, we still have much more generous rules. And you compare us to Cambridge and like the suburbs of Boston, and you'll find that our zoning densities that we have within our HDR, that 1 unit per 1,500 or 1 unit per 3,000 is 27 units an acre, and that exceeds a lot of the densities that are allowed in much bigger cities. So just as a point of reference, as you look outside of our city boundaries, these are actually when we say high density, they're actually high density for a community of ours. And we don't take advantage, for the most part, we don't take advantage of much of our density. There's a lot of unused development potential that's still sitting out, not being used. I mean, clearly, since they've adjusted the zoning, every single family home can have 6 units if it could meet the parking and other requirements. But even ignoring that, we've always had very generous rules. So this one, you're thinking MDR, which I think makes sense to me. I'm thinking HDR is the res 3000, those really high density areas right in the core. But again, any parcel out here still could have 6 units on it, which is, this is a 6,000 square foot lot, so that would be 7 units an acre. That'd be 42 units. If everybody on Colonial Drive put 6 units in, that would be 42 units an acre, which would be
Right.
which
There's
would
also
be a
these,
lot
like,
of
large
housing.
lots, like there's that huge,
Yeah.
there are some large lots. That
Yeah,
could
and then
be-
there's those that aren't being used at all.
So speaking of which, what is the rural? So I always like to think of in urban planning that you have this like urban core, and then you stretch out into like a suburban feel, then from suburban to exurban, from exurban to rural. But here we have like this rural strip right in the middle of our medium density residential. What is going on Hill Street? What is that area like? I think I've driven down it a couple of times.
So the easier thing to think of with Hill Street is really if you're driving down River Street and you're driving into town and you're kind of looking up to the left, you see this big forested hill.
Yeah.
And it's a big steep hill. Hill Street kind of cuts across it. And it's kind of a cut fill that's in there. So it's really steep on the one side and really steep on the other. There are a couple of houses in there that you see down, from Prospect Street up, but pretty quickly you end up getting into a pretty steep area where there are not services. So in this case, everything that's designated rural does not have sewer and water. So you get to an area where we don't have the sewer and water access. And then as you get closer to the boundary with Berlin, who have we got down here?
That's Berlin.
Berlin, yes. You run into, I believe, one of the Booth Brother farms, I think, is out there.
Okay.
And so there's some conservation properties out here that are in current use or in conservation. So,
Okay, but they don't have water and sewer? Is that what? Okay.
yeah, correct.
And unpaved, does that kind of go hand in hand if there's like unpaved road and no water and sewer services, or not necessarily?
We have
You could-
very few unpaved roads. I think Hill Street is paved all the way out.
Oh, okay.
It may stop at the town line, but maybe it stops just before.
Gotcha.
But there are only a couple of unpaved ones I know over on off Town Hill. We've got Murray Road, not to be confused with Murray Hill, Murray Road, which is unpaved. I think we had this one and we had the one I was staff recommendation. I don't know where I ended up. Yeah, so this is actually a little bit closer to what I think you guys just agreed to make that all medium, not high density. This area would be high density. Berlin Street. Berlin Street's currently zoned residential. I've out to the traffic light there at Granite Street converted that to mixed use residential, because you also find after Dunkin' Donuts, you still have a number of uses out that way that were commercial. There's a hair salon and a couple other things. And I could also see that area, again, future context, I could see that area having some commercial. Maybe somebody puts a law office, buys one of those. Maybe it's residential. It gives you that opportunity to have both, stopping at the Granite Street in this case.
Mike, going back a second. So I think one of the key differences between ours is that I don't have high density residential. It's all the same thing with medium density.
Yes.
So I think it's a question.
yours was this was yours. It was split into two colors.
But but
But
I do not have high density residential. So right now on my map, Prospect Street would be the same as Colonial Drive.
yes.
So
yes,
how do you guys
that would
feel
be,
about that? Or would you prefer to have like a high density for Prospect Street and then medium density for Colonial Drive?
It's just
Prospect
Carol.
is kind of tucked up behind.
kinda off
If
the
you're
road.
on Berlin Street, yep. See him tucked up there. Yes, and we can, I know from a wording standpoint, you don't like calling something high density residential. I'm going to say if we keep the three designations, low, medium, and high density, we
Mhm.
can always go back afterwards and change the wording of it. But I think it
Okay.
makes it easier to talk about either we're going to have two residential districts or we're going to have three. And it kind of seemed like we were leaning towards three. And then we can discuss what the very specifics of each one are later. I mean, that would be, and that's up to you guys as to how to have the conversation. We can rename things later. But I think going through the map, if we're talking about having three different residential densities, it might make it easier. And by the way, up to 2018, that's how our zoning map was laid out, was with low, medium, and high. It'll probably confuse everybody to go back.
Was low rural?
In that case, low also included rural.
Mm.
But it just had a generic requirement that was like, it's 2 acres unless you have water or sewer, in which case it's this. And if you have both, it's this. So it was a
Yeah.
zoning district that kind of had it's this, or this. And so, and we kind of cleaned that up to say, no, if you're the zoning district, that's your density. If you're that, you're that.
But so if you expand out a little bit and look at the rest of the city. So currently my map is Prospect Street and Colonial Drive are the same density designation as like College Street and Loomis Street.
And that's what I have
So this is like,
here.
but on your map, College and Colonial are one color. Prospect and Loomis are a different color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that
So
would
is
be,
that,
that would be
so that's what I'm asking
next
people,
question for
whether
everybody
you
else.
guys think
we're
there's like
okay
a,
with the Northfield Street. The question now is Prospect Street.
so do you think Prospect Street should be considered, or that Northfield Street should be considered the same as Prospect Street, or should it be two different density areas?
I personally see them as quite similar.
That's my,
Northfield Street?
Northfield Street, which we were just discussing, and yeah,
I feel like the southern part of Northfield Street is different than, the residential part. The southern part, there's going to be those two new high density, like affordable apartment units coming up, and there's the motel, there's the church, and then kind of as you go further up, then it is just truly kind of a neighborhood without any of the commercial stuff. So
yeah. So that currently, that section actually, where the two proposals are, is mixed use residential. It's not until you get past the motel and that vacant lot, that's when it gets into res. So if you consider that res compared to Prospect, when I think about the density of those residential buildings, I think they're pretty similar. And also future looking as well.
I mean, this is like half a mile from downtown. It's highly
Yeah.
walkable.
It is.
We first moved here, we thought that was, I think, a place that we walked to from our house. We never considered getting in the car because we thought it was so close.
It's very
So-
walkable. We know families that live up there that
Yeah.
that walk. It's a steep hill, but proximity, like distance wise, is not
I mean,
that far.
it's so close to Shaw's, and anyway.
There's
yeah,
also
I mean,
100
so
speak.
I'm off of Northfield Street. Like, that's
Oh,
where I
okay.
live. So this is like I'm on this side of the river. So,
And what do you think?
yeah, well, I mean, what's the exact question? Like,
So can we zoom? Can you zoom out on yours?
I'm looking at your map now.
Can you add in
Go
staff
back to-
recommendations map?
Go back to Maria's
I
map.
can do all four, but I can't just do the two unless
So
you
the
know.
question is, so this is mine down here.
Yours
So do
is
you see how,
bottom
like
left.
I remove the this like, where's staff?
Staff
that
is on the
here.
right.
So you kind of see how like College Street over here is treated differently than these like closer in streets.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Whereas for me, I treat it all the same.
Yep.
So the question is, does Northfield Street, so see how here, this is considered to be different than like these neighborhoods that are
Yeah.
right there.
Okay.
So like
Yes.
see like Northfield Street is given a lower density designation.
Yeah.
than
Okay. And you're just talking about kind of that upper half of Northfield.
Right, so like
Street.
the
Yeah, yeah,
part
yeah.
of Northfield Street should be considered the same as like what's happening here in Prospect, what's happening here over like on Ridge Street and First Avenue.
Yeah, no, I agree, Maria, with your assessment that, kind of this upper part of Northfield Street, Colonial Drive, Freedom, etc., is similar enough to College Hill. Yeah. I was getting caught up on saying Northfield Street. In my mind, it has kind of that lower part and the upper part. But the way your map looks with those neighborhoods,
Yeah, and I was just
That makes
confused because I see there's a line there and a color difference between the Freedom Drive side and the Colonial side, which is why I was.
Right.
So you do have 1, 2, and then you've kind of made MUR a lot bigger to kind of be the third one.
but then I thought we just agreed that the two colors in Maria's map were actually just gonna make that one color for Colonial and Freedom and Independence.
Right, they're like darker yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
And
Yeah,
then
I think-
Prospect. So it all becomes the same style of neighborhood.
No, that makes sense to me. I don't think there's a highly distinctive kind of element of that side versus the other side. They're all just
yeah, I think
great little neighborhood.
I think mine ends up being, if you're looking at the staff recommendation, that I end up in just only having 2 residential categories, and mine, Northfield Street, is all the same. And I think I would agree that yellow area there, the Prospect Street, would also turn into that. I guess we're calling LDR in that case. Because
MD.
MDR, or yeah, depending on how we're defining it. Because in my case, I only have 2, so it's MDR, HDR, or LDR and MDR. But the yellow is the higher density, and the olive is the medium density, and we would turn that one to medium density, which probably makes sense also because this extension going up the hill is Cherry Street and Pleasant View. It is
So
Pleasant
steep.
something. It is
So
so steep.
Oh.
yeah, you guys.
To make that higher density would be foolish. So yeah, that would definitely be another olive colored, but it's got sewer and water, so it would match what's in there. So
I mean, I did move here from San Francisco. We're talking about steep streets. There are some streets have, instead of sidewalks, there's steps up the street. It's possible.
yes, oh, it is possible.
Modern
They
engineering.
don't have to plow the snow off of those though.
My gosh.
Although they do have to deal with the earthquakes,
Yes, do have to deal with the
There's-
earthquakes.
seismic activity in San Francisco that we don't have to deal with.
It has snowed in San Francisco before.
It has.
Oh,
Yeah, there's some great
Okay.
photos.
there we go. Learn something new. So yeah, as we keep swinging around the city, we've kind of defined this is why Hill Street is green. Also why that little section under I-89 and into Berlin is also green, because they don't have the services.
Okay.
And then this area here would, and we're looking at my staff map right now. The difference between mine and Maria's is that Maria continued mixed-use residential out Berlin Street, which is an option. I keep all of this as one zoning, similar zoning density through here. So that would all be what you're calling medium density. Currently, this is split into two. So up until just before Hebert is Res 6000, and then after Hebert and Isabel Circle and Sherwood Drive is all Res 9000. So there are sidewalks on the lower part.
You're saying that's current.
That's current.
Yeah.
And this would make it all the same, and we can decide what the density will be later, but this would basically make, no matter where you are, George Street, Pleasant View, the Wheelock, Sherwood, those would all be the same zoning density as Colonial Drive and those, as well as College Street. So we're kind of having a more unified zoning density as it's going out that way.
So my thought process for Berlin Street was kind of, well, it goes throughout the city, was that arterials could be mixed use residential. So this is like chiropractor offices, therapy offices, right? It's kind of, it's not as much storefronts as it is being able to use your building to house a type of office. So that was the thought process. And it happens throughout my map. So even like Main Street, Elm Street, parts of Terrace get this mixed use residential designation. I don't know. Well, I'm wondering how you guys think about it. I know when we bought our house on East State Street, being mixed use, we thought was a plus in our book, because someday we could possibly offset the cost of the house by having some type of office space there. So, but now it's an apartment, it's housing. It's just everyone knows. Anyway, but I'm curious what other people think of that.
I just don't have the strongest opinion about mixed use residential in these spaces. You know, what my mind really goes to, okay, this is an artery into the city. It's into downtown. It's very easy to get into downtown. I can imagine there being high density residential. Like I think that at the end of the day, that's the big thing for me. So I don't know how helpful that is. But that's it. That's my focus is high density res. And less so on the commercial side of things. But that's just because I haven't put much thought to it.
I mean, perhaps in the dimensional standards, the mixed use becomes high residential, because I don't have a high density residential.
Mhm.
So maybe that is kind of,
I think when we get to dimensional standard stuff, that it was a point that I was going to bring up, but Tim mentioned it from the housing committee, of having separate standards for commercial versus residential, and being more permissive on the residential side of things. And certainly within these mixed use residential areas. I like the idea of mixed use residential areas. I think that, who doesn't like, the cafe within walking distance, Birch Grove right there next to the meadow. And that being a possibility somewhere else is appealing, as long as it maintains, yes, a possibility of high density residential.
I'm just guessing here, but I would guess that that business owners in downtown might not like that designation, as it could potentially pull business away from downtown. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Really, I'm not a business owner in town, but I could imagine that that might be an opinion.
I don't know. I feel like I'm not very imaginative. I'm having Berlin. There's like no parking on the street. That sounds so hard to open a business on Berlin Street. I don't know.
Well, I hear you, and Maria's point where she lives in that whole stretch all the way up East State Street to the college is mixed use residential. It falls
Okay.
very similarly into the same category. I would say.
And I would
Oh, that's
also like to point
helpful,
out that
yeah.
on-street parking slows cars down. So maybe we don't need the like, you're going 27 miles per hour, blink, 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 blink. Instead, you just have on-street cars parked and people naturally slow down.
There actually is, there's a ton of parking on Berlin Street. You just,
Yeah, it's not used very much, but it
Yeah.
is there.
there's space there to park on the side of that entire stretch.
I don't know if you're trying to dodge the.
On one side, it is
On one.
tricky and it's tricky from a complete street standpoint there. One of the arguments was that there shouldn't be parking on that street, because that should have the bike lane to help support that. And there is parking. It's kind of sporadic. There's a lot of no parking, parking, no parking, parking, no parking, parking on its way down. But yes, that's my neighborhood as well, is Berlin Street. So
I'm torn. I'm sorry. I can't.
It's-
I
you know,
can't
you don't-
give you a strong opinion about.
and we can leave things open to make decisions. To make some of these decisions afterwards, we can just go through and say we're still undecided on some of the mixed use residential extensions.
I think we should. I think that's a good idea. I think we should continue to consider them.
Yeah.
Because it may be appropriate in some sections and not in others. It may end up being one it's okay here, not there type answer when we get to the end.
In that same area, though, I just wanted to say I am comfortable with the designation for that from staff recommendations that makes it consistent all the way up Berlin Street.
So we have the potential of running that brown district up through
Yeah.
here.
But you have
this would all remain as the same zoning designation,
right.
Right.
which I think we've all agreed on. All these are going to be basically the same. Down here at the bottom in yellow, this is if you're at the car wash, you've got Blackwell, Taplin, and Scribner, which are on smaller lots. That's what this yellow area is. And that yellow area will be green. We've already decided that.
Okay.
What is that weird section between, it's on my map, it's like between the two Browns on River Street. I guess the Wheelock Street. So why do we think that we should treat those 3 blocks of River Street differently than what comes before or after? You know?
On my map here.
Yes. So like that. So if you zoom out,
All right.
after this section, you have it yellow, and before it's
It's the brown color, and let me try to
yeah. There's
see
like
if I can
you
find
got
my.
closer to downtown, and then it turns into the green.
So my
into the
my
pink,
brown is
into the-
mixed use residential 2. Is the light brown, so that would allow for bigger buildings. So these are, if you were driving down through here, we've got some gas stations and paint stores on the left. On the right, we've got some big office buildings that are kind of stretched in there. As you get to Scribner, I think you've got the radio on the one side and the
You jog my memory again, this is just mixed use 1 and 2.
Mixed use 2 in my new thing was just allowed for slightly bigger buildings. So mixed use 1 is kind of like what you see, and actually we could argue like the hotel property could be a mixed use 2 as well if we wanted to get picky in drawing some lines. But really it was meant to start to look at the difference between Berry Street and Stonecutter's Way, because they're the same zoning district right now, but distinctly different characters. One is very big buildings. What had been planned, Stonecutter's Way had been planned to be mixed use, except that they sold it, and everything they sold it to ended up being built as commercial. But it had been designed and intended to be a mixed use neighborhood, but they were going to allow bigger buildings. So MUR would allow potentially, we know the co-op now owns where the RK Miles was. We would have the potential to add residential units there if that's what they wanted, or whatever happens beyond that. On this side, so this would allow for bigger. We could certainly go through and adjust for smaller buildings if we want to go to MUR instead of MUR2. But this was intended to be a mixed use area on its way out. When you started to get up to the Pioneer Street Bridge where we have the car wash, on the right you have those steep ones going up and mostly small residential units.
Where's that Leahy Press building that has potential for redevelopment? Is that,
I believe that's where the squiggly line is here. If you can see my screen, it's
so
off Wheelock
that's
Street.
mixed use?
Yeah.
That would allow for residential development.
Yep, they could convert that to residential. There's a couple of these that are in that same category.
And this whole area that we're discussing in the medium brown is currently riverfront, so it's going to mixed use 2 rather than that sort of bespoke riverfront
Yes.
district.
Yeah, I was trying to get away from the riverfront district.
Yeah.
Nomenclature.
Last meeting, Aaron, we kind of discussed MUR2, yes, and riverfront being what we're calling like a permissive zoning area.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that is, so MUR2 is kind of like what we are thinking of as permissive zoning.
Okay.
The question is, should we treat this section of River Street differently than what comes before and after? Do you guys, are you guys seeing this too, or is it just like,
I mean,
that sees this island?
From looking at the map, it is glaring. Thinking about driving down the street, like I do, yeah, the gas station, Heather's nearly new, and
This is on this side, and this
chiropractor.
side is, like you're saying, it's like that, well, used to be a copy or like a t-shirt printing place,
Yeah,
right?
Bevins was there.
This,
Yep.
it's not offices. It's not mixed use offices. It's like actual.
No. And then so the start of River Street, so basically from the light at Granite Street Bridge over to Phelps, I left as all residential because these are mostly, a lot of these are fronting on Berlin Street. And then the ones that are here fronting on River Street are really tightly in there and mostly residential. So that's kind of why I was, and some of these access off, you got these 3 lots here, they're actually up here on the hill because they're accessing off of Allen Row. So
I think that makes sense.
it's that's why this is residential and not mixed use, is because there's not really much there. In fact, I want to say this is all blocked off except for maybe 1 or 2 buildings down here that might be accessible, 3 of them.
Yeah.
Another edit for mine is farther down River Street. Again, I only wanted the lots that were on River Street to be designated as mixed use. And this has the lots going into Blackwell Street and Taplin Street as mixed use.
Ah,
So if you go further to the right there,
Yes, east. So like that.
it's basically that section that's across River Street from the car wash.
Right, so I think that should all be a residential,
yep.
as in your map. except for the part that's fronting River Street.
Yep, this is a big different parcel there, I think. It's got the getting late. The substation, thank you.
Mm.
So that's, I think, why that differs slightly from where my map kind of, actually, my map looks like it's got the
You know,
substation as well as residential, so.
Yeah. Our zoning, I think, bisects that singular parcel that has the substation on the north side of it.
Yep. Yes.
But Taplin and Blackwell are interesting, like an interesting pocket of residential that exists in that area. And in the recommendations, it is sorry, that bright yellow.
Yep.
There's some huge
So we'll
lots.
make some adjustments over there.
Okay.
Sorry, were you saying that the substation parcel is actually two different colors?
Is that true?
In the current, is that what you're saying?
I'm looking at the staff recommendation. It's hard to tell what's a parcel line and what's the color.
I know it actually. This might be an issue with the GIS data underneath. No, I think it is. I can't tell.
Yeah.
And then do we know what that sliver is just east of it? 223, just adjacent to the substation?
Oh.
I think it's currently in residential.
Okay.
So, did you have an opinion of that space? You were saying where the staff recommendation is to keep that Taplin and Blackwell section residential. That you would agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the properties facing River Street should be mixed use.
Yeah.
The properties not on River Street should be
Okay, I
residential.
see. So that would represent a handful of parcels that would
Right.
shift from the staff rec of residential over to mixed use.
Yeah, I mean, what do you guys, I just think it seems to be a very commercial area.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get too sucked into what things are right now
Yep.
versus what they could be. And everything on River Street certainly has the potential for commercial making sense, right? That's
Yep.
a main artery. And anywhere you can put in an apartment building with commercial on the ground floor be great. You know, we have to give people the room to let their creativity work.
I hear that. So with that comment, then that whole small section to the upper part of Mike's map here could be mixed use residential too.
You know, I
The
want to,
yellow area here for Taplin, and those guys
Right.
would be MUR as well.
Thinking about the future.
so when I first started my business in 2019, my business partner and I went to some like lecture about running a business in Vermont and Burlington. And when we had to go around the room and say what our business idea was. And when people found out that we actually had a space in Montpelier, their jaws were on the floor. I feel like the commercial climate has changed a lot in the past 3 or 4 years in downtowns. But within the past 7 years, the idea of being able to open a business in Montpelier was seen as extremely difficult because there wasn't space for businesses. And then, after the meeting, we had a bunch of lenders approaching us because they were so amazed that we were able to have a commercial space in Montpelier. It was seen as like an impossibility at that time. I mean, it's changed a lot, since then, but there's no reason to think that the city can't get back to a place where people really want a space to run a business in Montpelier and can't find one. That was the reality 7 years ago.
I mean, ideally, we get back to a place where there's a crunch, right?
Oh, for sure. But I'm just saying, the current climate right now is like, there are so many empty storefronts. Like, we don't need more commercial.
Right.
Could
But
easily see a
then,
future where we do actually need more commercial, and maybe commercial that's not in the floodplain.
yeah, hopefully we get back to that point where we need more, and that our zoning has enough flexibility that people can provide it in a
I'll just
reasonable time frame.
say I think there are a lot of like solopreneurs that, depending on how you read the regs and stuff, like could you have a small whatever, some sort of medical type office? Could you have a legal office, right? Could somebody have, and I know we want housing, but is that gonna, if there was a mixed use possibility where somebody above a carriage house could have an office or something, right? Does that make a particular property more appealing to somebody who might be thinking, like a Maria, who might be thinking of moving here? I know we're not going to decide it tonight, but I think there's some merit to thinking about it.
Yeah, home businesses are always allowed. So when we're talking about this, we're usually talking about things that aren't home businesses because you could already do the home business or industry. So this would be converting it to something that wouldn't necessarily be a home business. But yes, it's again, all of our buildings, I think that the accessory building is a good example. If somebody had the extra space, could they use that in a more commercial sense instead of a residential sense? And that's what this vision would have to look at is, and actually I would, bounce us over to, are these the areas that make sense as we kind of end up with a mishmashing of Maria's and my maps. But
I feel like we're coming to a consensus here, Mike.
Yeah.
Don't you feel it?
well, again, we can go through and put everything on the map, and then when we get done, we'll have the public input, and we can talk about the consequences of what works and what we think doesn't work, and then we could talk about what the public thinks of these as ideas. And I can't begin to guess entirely where people will fall nowadays. But I do agree with Tim that I do think you'll get a bit of pushback probably from the business community on whether or not this is going to be kind of a weakening of our downtown by having these more commercial establishments outside of our core. But that'll be for debate, discussion, and decision. It's what the zoning's for.
If we go back to the staff recs view, so if we say yes to MUR2 in that small residential area, yep, there. And then if we look further east and then down River Street, I think it makes a lot of good sense to have that also continued with mixed use residential too.
Where are you looking?
All the way down River Street.
All
so
down
toward.
So the way I have it drawn right now.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just moving forward a little bit and saying I personally think that looks great.
Yeah, because currently their area is zoned Western Gateway, which tended to really kind of favor commercial and these other uses. We've got our Tractor Supply, we've got our car dealerships. We would just have to talk about how the use table ends up looking at the end, because if we allow car dealerships over here in mixed use residential too, then that means car dealerships are allowed everywhere. And maybe it's just something that's, the reality is we're not going to get new car dealerships popping up, but we just have to recognize that's a potential of what could be. If it's allowed then it can be allowed anywhere in that district. We can make it a conditional use, which gives us an opportunity to say yes there, but not there. But we'll have that discussion when we get there. But I still think that was why I drew this out this way, was because I kind of felt let's allow more residential out here and see what happens.
Yeah.
That is not what I have on my map. Because I wanted the permissive zoning to be closer to downtown. This like permissive zoning idea, because I still want to uphold that kind of like walkable small town urban community. I think pulling that permissible zoning out towards where, you know, Tractor Supply is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it has an ability to shift the town towards that, like, you know, South Burlington, not to denigrate other communities, but, or, you know, I grew up in Philadelphia, so I'm thinking of like the main line where you have these major arterials with, you know, every single chain store you can imagine. And I don't know.
You don't want a strode.
A what?
Strode.
A scrode?
Strode.
Strode, what's that?
It's a. You know what a strode is? Am I making this up?
I've never.
The strode is strode is a main arterial road that has direct access, that acts as a street for.
Oh.
It's like the worst kind of road. It's like
Yeah,
is
so
my
this
my
is-
my understanding. It's
My
like
fear is
you-
turning into the worst kind of.
yeah, if you yes, like I guess like a Shelburne Road kind of operates as a strode where you have
Shelburne is lovely.
where you have like, but it's just where you have it operates as an arterial road with a lot of direct access to individual businesses. So it
Right.
creates it becomes very pedestrian unfriendly. It creates a certain amount of gridlock along the road. So
And there's like exurban areas of DC that are like this, where, you know, you pull out of your driveway onto a 45-mile-per-hour road. You know, not in like a rural sense. It's like, it is just, it's, I don't know. I would prefer for this like dense, permissive zoning area to be closer to the core of the city, where buses are available, where bike paths are available. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think this might be the first place for me where I disagree.
I know.
And here's my thinking, is that as I said earlier, Montpelier is very small. When we talk about these areas and putting some residential in those spaces and the idea of it being more of wanting a more downtown core, I immediately think of our outside of Montpelier. So what's happening in places like Berlin that have active communities that are being built. I think if we don't sort of join in that space, that there's going to be more and more of that happens in surrounding towns and pushing sprawl continuing in those areas. So I see one of the things that has been occurring to me is that I definitely see Montpelier as part of the region, a core of the region. I see the entire city as a core of the region, meaning when you look at all of the zoning designations that we have and thinking about future land use, Montpelier has all of them. It's a microcosm. We're creating a microcosm. We've sort of created a microcosm, and so we go from this urban center and within 10 square miles go out to rural. Again, if you look at St. Albans and their future land use map, they have 3 designations, as I recall seeing. It is their downtown core, some designated park, so that's or open space, it's more rural, and maybe industrial. There's some industrial pieces, and then outside of the city of St. Albans is the town of St. Albans. They're continuing their planned growth in that direction. Again, the geography is different and a smaller square mileage, but they are not looking at the city of St. Albans as a microcosm that includes all zoning districts. So when I think about the future of Montpelier, I would, my fantasy is that the entire thing is Tier 1A, and we are the central city for central Vermont. So yeah, that's where my mind goes.
I would back Tim on that. I would note that at its widest from east to west, Montpelier is 4 miles across. That's just a very and downtown's in the middle of that, right? So you're never more than 2 miles away from downtown east to west. There's a bike path that you can access at the bottom of Country Club Road, very close to River Street. I wouldn't want to limit potentially great neighborhood in that area because we're worried about negative possibilities. I guess I would like for us not to be operating in a fear-based environment on this.
Is anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, the particulars of the map aside, I guess I would agree. It's just, in all of my time here, we sometimes get wrapped around the axle of what could happen, and none of the dystopian futures that sometimes we sketch out for, what the city will look like have come even close to fruition, and I don't expect that to ever happen. So in that sense, Tim, I tend to agree, like, if we can create as much density as possible, really create a permissive environment, regardless of what that looks like, and there's always going to be like, well, if you allow this, it will happen. And I always see this zoning as part of a multi-pronged process, a highly iterative process for anybody to develop anything here. And this exercise is just sort of it's truly sort of a gateway permissive structure. There is a whole lot of detailed, development that has to occur in order for any, anything to be developed in any real way. So
That's true. And I'm counting the parcels down here. It's about 10 parcels, and very likely 0 of them would convert to residential. But leaving that possibility open, I feel comfortable with. Again, like looking at the developments that are happening in Berlin. Could I see something like that in that space? I could actually. You have proximity to Barry. At that point, you have proximity to the express care that's out that way.
So you just want a Chipotle in town.
That's not what I'm saying.
I mean, I hear the words coming in your mouth, but what I'm really hearing is something different, and that's fair. We can be open and honest about that.
We have three votes for MUR. If we've got a fourth, we'll have a draft MUR2, or we leave it undecided for a future decision. And again, any decisions we make, we will be able to revisit later on.
I'm undecided. Abe, where are you at?
I'm just undecided generally about MUR. I mean, I think it's worth thinking about. So what would we do to just table it?
We table it.
Just table it.
We just don't make a decision. That's fine. I mean, so I just have on here Route 302 question, MUR2 or Gateway. And it's an open question for when we get back. On my map, I broke out the new property, the Home Farm Way property that the city now owns. That's going to be a park. Has already been designated a park. It has easements on it, so it's never going to be anything other than what it is. That's the Connors building.
How's that going to be accessed?
It's Home Farm Way, which is the same as this is one home farm way, and this is 5 home farm way. So it's driveway accesses.
Okay.
Through.
Yep. It's going to be part of the Parks Department?
It is already part of the
Already?
Parks Department. Got voted 3 weeks ago, I think.
And all that demo work is done?
All the demo work is done. The building is gone. We still have, we've got $3 million in grants to remove 27,000 cubic yards of fill out of that to lower the floodplain, to give additional floodplain capacity as kind of a pilot project to see how much impact this has in future floods. Hopefully it makes a big difference. We don't think it's going to make a huge difference, but we'll see if in combination with other stuff that it kind of has an additive effect. But that'll hopefully get removed next year, and then that project will be done. But so that's Home Farm Way. That's where the old Cabot building is, if you've been here a long time. Now it's, I think, mostly medical pieces. This green on this side, so this is Gateway. So this is what Maria had as Gateway. This is all that I have left of Gateway or something. What do I have that as? Gateway, yes. I cut out and created a new thing for industrial. As I've said, go back to the old Euclidean. You don't want certain uses mixing. This area has tractor trailer trucks, all sorts of big industrial. And therefore, I really wanted to make sure that it was kind of protected. So that way we don't end up having somebody having residential be allowed and somehow have somebody insert some residential in there. And I have seen this happen, having worked in Berry City. This ended up being a thing in Berry City. That over on Boynton Street, and if you know Boynton Street, that's very, very industrial, and people are sneaking little apartments in there, and that was becoming a problem. It wasn't a problem when it was meant to be like a caretaker's, to be in there to kind of keep an eye on things at night to make sure kids weren't messing with stuff, except that it ended up being rented out after the caretaker to families with kids. And so you had these little 3, 4, 5-year-olds running around with these tractor trailer trucks, and we were like, yeah, this is just an accident waiting to happen. So
that makes good sense to me. I'm curious about like whenever a zoning district cuts into a parcel, because that parcel there is actually quite large, and we actually already have it separated, I think, into, yeah, because that says it's 96 acres and goes up the hill. We already have a separation there between industrial and rural. So I'm curious how often that happens. Do we take a singular parcel and
we've got a couple. I mean, Sabin's Pasture, Country Club Road,
yeah,
Crestview. Anytime you get these really big parcels, at a certain point, you're at a scale of, I don't know what, where we draw the line on this one. Do we keep it all commercial, even though we know it can't be built on for X, Y, and Z reasons?
right.
Generally, because we can do rezoning fairly easily, I tend to think generously, we would go out here, generously put that line out there. That is way far behind what's already developed. So if somebody wanted to develop more industrial, they can keep building back more.
Right.
And if they reached a point where they were like, we need more, well, just come back and make a request, and the planning commission will go through. And we do these every year.
Yeah.
So if somebody gets there and says, we think more of this should be included in X instead of Y, then we can have a debate and a discussion and move the line.
Great. I'm comfortable with the industrial designation personally. There are a lot of big trucks that go through there into the spaces.
Yeah, Cabot in particular.
Yeah.
It seems very appropriate.
So that was why I had those. And Gateway is still Gateway, and I think we don't do as good of a job on our Gateway. We really want to. The point of the Gateway was to make sure people enter the city. You realize you're in the city, and it's really, and I don't know if we've necessarily been doing as good enough job to make that big positive impression on the 2 gateways. That was the whole point of it.
What would be positive?
I don't think we've done as good with the design, and we don't have the sidewalks out on East Montpelier Road. I mean, I'd really kind of like to see a little bit more of that. I mean, we've got the bike path now, but
in your head, like, what does it look like?
I guess in my head, I would like to see us doing, if you drive in, well, we're gonna get the one spot there cleaned up. But we'd have a sidewalk there on the south side, so the gas station's on its way through. There should be sidewalks for people if they're either working and wanting to walk over to the gas stations or whatever. There's just opportunities there, and a lot of the bike path and into the railroad tracks is really unkept. As you get to the railroad bridge, there's just dead trees and it's not really mowed. I mean, again, that's working with the rail division to be able to go in and say, can we just get in here with a mower twice a year and knock this stuff down? And I think if it were mowed and cleaned and looked nice, it would have a much better gateway impression. Now, that's not really zoning, but it's more.
But what is the built environment look like? What do the buildings look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need places for our gas stations. But yeah, I think it would be nicer to have slightly different buildings out there, but I think the reality is that's what's out there right now. But maybe over time, we've got the self-store units. We've got a number of small buildings that easily could be replaced with something bigger. There, it's in the floodplain, but they could be easily elevated to make things work in there. Casella is set back. They've made a lot of investments after the flood, so I don't see they're going anywhere anytime soon. I don't know. And whether it was this gateway or the other side, both of them, I think some of the landscaping, and which is, like I said, less zoning, more other things that I would like to have.
When you look at other cities, with gateway areas, what you see over time is it becomes more economically. I actually like Gateway a lot. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do there, and I know that currently it's hard to envision what's currently there, like what else could be there. But what you see in other places is when the economic drive is there, all of a sudden you have new things going in, right? Again, that's like the Hampton Inn example, or like an apartment building or something else that's, like you wouldn't necessarily put in the city center, but they're really nice additions in these areas. And, it takes time, it takes the, economic incentive, but I think I like the Gateway.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I left it. Was I think it's good. I just don't think we do a good job with it. Not necessarily blaming the zoning as much as I am how we are accomplishing what the goal of that district. If I was thinking from the city plan standpoint, I think I would love to see little things that I think could really make our gateways show off our city better than we do. That's what the intent was when they created the gateway districts, was that this is the gateway to the city. This is the introduction before you get to the downtown. And that was true for Route 302 as well as Route 2. On my maps for Country Club Road, I kept them the same. And I think I mentioned this the last meeting or two meetings, because we've got people putting in proposals and I didn't want to change the rules. Recognizing that we may, after they come back with a proposal and we agree with it, we might come back and say, hey, this looks an awful lot like mixed use residential too, in which case we rezone it. So that way we eliminate this special district that's sitting out here. But that was why I didn't change this one.
I think that's very smart to keep it as a.
Yeah.
For now.
For now. All the green area doesn't have sewer and water. I think I mentioned last time, this one parcel here is Saban's pasture. I put MUR2 at the bottom. I would like to see a yellow area up top as well, working with Doug and Alan to kind of come up with, I don't have the topo maps to be able to draw a line to say, this is the area that could support more residential units above the mixed use area.
Can we take some time to compare your and Maria's versions of
Sure.
this? Because, again, especially with CCR, I mean, I feel like you could have a massive redevelopment that really does connect that entire, that from all the way through Stonecutters Way Savings pasture. And I feel like, again, the most permissive, let people be creative in terms of what goes in there, but it could be not what it is today, right? It could be really beautiful. And I couldn't really tell the difference between what you were proposing, Mike, and what we had kind of talked about.
I agree with you, Gabe, and at the same time, it would be an anomaly. And so, how much do we plan for a future where we do have sewer and water relatively close to town? Because at the moment we don't have sewer and water here, and so we are kind of automatically designating it as rural. But because of its proximity, what if we were to follow Maria's map here and make them both residential? Again, this would be an anomaly. It would be different from the rest of how we're treating the rest of rural.
Except for Crestview.
Yeah, we'll get over there.
But
We'll
Yeah, no,
tackle
that's a
these
good point.
two, yeah.
John.
Crestview has no services,
And is
is
residential.
zoned residential.
And it is residential in
True.
our current map as
Yep.
well.
That's true. So yeah, as we said, when we initially did this, 2017, when the planning commission went through and we zoned this entire area res 6,000. So we know a lot of it is steep and undevelopable. We know there's wetlands, there's floodplains. There are a number of areas, but we zone the entire area res 6,000 as a planning commission, which would be the same as College Street. It was city council that split it into the two. So I'm not going to say I disagree that zoning this in this way, in other words, keeping these where they are, but taking out the rural areas, which there's a lot of steep undevelopable areas, which I think is the other reason why we've talked about keeping it green. But that could be true of a lot of places. Ridge Street and some of the roads over here, Kent Street, you could make that same argument too. I mean, it's like, well, you got the zoning, but half the property is a cliff.
Right.
It's like, well,
But half
yeah,
the-
but it's
But half the property isn't and is developable.
isn't and is developable.
Whenever
So-
I drive by the Savings Pasture property on Barry Street, and I'm looking up because it is quite wide open. I know that there are definitely spots that are not developable, but it is quite wide open and it is sloped. But as Maria mentioned earlier, I do think about places like San Francisco. From a San Francisco perspective, it seems very doable in terms of development. I'm not a developer, but just from a sort of layperson commissioner perspective, I drive by and I can picture housing in a lot of those spaces.
I mean, even like Nelson Street here,
Yeah.
which is vertical climb. But I think those buildings were built back when we allowed things to be built on steep streets,
Right. And was that a bad decision? We wouldn't
Well-
make that decision.
I think they're beautiful houses.
You can go to Stowe, and I mean, obviously it's a different situation, but they're building on, they're building on steep areas, right? And they're doing it today, not 20 years ago.
When I say was that a bad decision, I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't think it's a bad decision. The people that live there, I think, are probably grateful to have those houses, love those houses, and they work. They're not all falling down the slopes, as I understand it.
Well,
I
somebody
think
who looks up at those houses, I think they are stunning. I think they are actually beautiful houses. So they add to the aesthetic of the city, I think.
I just want really quickly, we're at 7:29.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have to stop this instant, but
Yeah, and we
Soon.
and we have rules for steep slopes. So the development of steep slopes. Now there's a lot of places will have protections for the ridge lines. So just putting that out there. A lot of places, if you start cutting down the ridge lines and start building houses and plunking houses out there, people may push back to say, "Oh, we don't want people developing on the ridge lines." It's a policy aesthetic. But from a health, safety, and welfare standpoint, we already have the rules now in effect that go through and say, if you're going to be building in these areas, we check the foundations to make sure they're good.
Yeah.
Because while we haven't had issues necessarily in Montpelier with buildings sliding down, our neighbor Barry City down the road had 40 buildings in 23. A lot of their buildings from the flood actually were not buildings in the floodplain, but were buildings that were on the side of the hill that literally slid, or the hill slid into the building, or the building slid off the hill. And so, but those are things that can be regulated at the time of construction. They didn't have those rules at the time. But if you were going to build there, we would be examining whether you've got, where's bedrock, and are you driving piles to bedrock? Are you, what's your foundation and what's the soil type? And here, fortunately for a lot of ours, we've got a lot of steep slopes, but we also have a lot of ledge, a lot of rock. You're not far to pinning into something that's not going anywhere. So yeah, I'm okay with this idea if you want to look at that as kind of a potential way, because that's what we decided in the past, actually, was make it all res 6,000. And if they wanted to cluster it, they could cluster it. And if they didn't, they didn't. And I think what'll end up happening is those steep slopes are still, it's already expensive to build. If you want to build anything big and major out in those steep areas, there's still going to be wetland requirements. There's still going to be these other things. A lot of those areas are probably not going to get built on. The easiest places to build are going to be those places where that's where
I would do it, and then it allows us to get, property owner and developer feedback, or community feedback. And I also move that we adjourn.
I think it's a great opportunity to wrap up the meeting on that decision.
All right, that's a good place to stop. So we have a motion on the floor from Gabe.
I will
Second.
All those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn, thanks.